Gildan Media, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Art of Product Design, Changing How Things Get Made, by Hardi Meybaum, narrated by Jack Golia. Introduction. The Digital Revolution Gets Physical. Over the past 30 years, anything and everything that needs no physical form has been reduced to bits. Music, photographs, newspapers, plane tickets, and money have all gone digital. Soon, with driverless cars on the horizon, even taxi drivers may be transformed from flesh into software. By comparison, change in things that must remain physical has been almost glacial. How we design and make stuff today, hardware, manufactured goods, is not radically different from what it was in 1980. And sadly, in the so-called post-industrial age, making things has been downright uncool. Intangibles such as software and finance have been where it's at. But that's about to change, and very quickly. Powerful forces are converging to drive a second great wave of the digital revolution. Where the first wave was about shedding physical form, the second wave exponentially amplifies our ability to create physical form, in any shape or size to any end we can imagine. In the process, it radically reorders all our notions about making things: who designs and who builds, how fast, where, and at what scale, and how is it marketed. It's not simply a matter of making new things we never dreamed of. This revolution comes with the opportunity to refashion thousands of everyday objects, making them smarter, greener, and connected with the surrounding environment. And now is precisely the time to do that, as technological viability converges with surging demand for solutions for critical challenges, ranging from spiraling healthcare costs to global warming. It's a revolution fueled by the monumental waste of time, energy, and health, both human and ecological, that is built into our current technology. It's about red traffic lights at midnight, the oceans of motor fuel we emit, and the millions of minutes we waste while stopped at them, even when there's no traffic. It's about the millions of pounds of cure we administer where nano-ounces of preventative health care would do. It's about the millions who still die needlessly in car crashes, despite our having to endure red lights at midnight. There is a humongous load of needlessly stupid stuff in this world that needs to be fixed, not when we get around to it, but right now. If waste fuels this revolution, an explosion of creativity drives it forward. At its very core are epic-making new tools that dramatically eliminate the barriers between human inspiration and physical reality. If you can imagine something that you know will work, anything, you can now build it, virtually, if not physically. The revolution takes shape as creators awake to the vast potential these tools unlock. It moves forward as creators pioneer new ways to organize human genius and effort around the new tools. It accelerates with passion and excitement, from the earnest desire to solve problems great and small to the eternal quest for human delight, be it high art or street cool. And of course, there's the scent of profit, too. There is definitely money in all this. You may have already noticed aspects of what's happening without realizing how the pieces fit together. New products appear in months instead of years. Three-dimensional, 3D printers are in the news. Hardware startups are sprouting up in unlikely places with crowd-funded capital. And talk of a makers movement ensues. Behind all these innovations are new tools that have matured and proliferated over the past 30 years with surprisingly little notice beyond the disciplines of design and engineering. They are the tools that now allow small startups to sprout up by achieving in mere months feats of technology that would have taken an army of engineers years to complete in the 1960s. They are the source of stunningly realistic visualizations that now draw investors from the crowd. They are the brains that precisely instruct those 3D printers. And they are what makes the makers movement more than just a hipster notion. Collectively, these tools are functions of three-dimensional computer-aided design, or 3D CAD, as we call it. In this book, you will learn why I believe historians will one day rank 3D CAD alongside Gutenberg's printing press among truly epic-making technologies. Skip to the absolutely essential thing to grasp about 3D CAD today. It concentrates unprecedented and phenomenal creative power on the designer's screen, at the point where ideas take shape, at the very top of the process that results in manufactured objects. And it projects that creative power through every stage of the process, from design through capital fundraising, prototyping, market research and manufacturing, all the way down to marketing. From the earliest inception of an idea, CAD eliminates abstraction by generating a three-dimensional virtual reality that is quickly malleable as the clay on a potter's wheel, and globally communicable with total fidelity at broadband speed. Via highly realistic 3D renderings, anyone anywhere can see instantly and exactly what the object is meant to do and provide feedback. What's more, via highly comprehensive numerical instructions, CAD can precisely instruct those who manufacture the object. Here's where we arrive at a key point of convergence. Those highly comprehensive numerical instructions that CAD generates are written in the language understood by robots and other increasingly sophisticated automated factory tools. From the designer's screen to the factory floor, be it in China or Chicago, nothing is lost in translation. In a nutshell, this is what makes 3D CAD pivotal in the second and physical wave of the digital revolution. But why is its impact only now becoming apparent? That's the story this book is going to tell. The first short answer is that until now, 3D CAD had developed essentially as 4 archipelagos of unconnected islands. 4 giant vendors have sold expensive and mutually incompatible systems, mainly to corporate customers, that have kept them strictly isolated behind firewalls. This setup allowed automakers and aerospace companies to make huge strides with gargantuan enterprise systems. But it meant that CAD remained largely a corporate phenomenon. For years, its revolutionary potential did not extend far beyond the immediate supply chains of large companies. That started to change over the past decade, as increasingly sophisticated capability began to come within reach of small enterprises and individuals by way of, still expensive, installed software. Even so, CAD users remained relatively isolated from one another, relying on email or file transfer services to pass around huge files, hardly what you could call an ecosystem. This is where our story begins, as several trends began to converge circa 2010. First, cloud computing began to make it possible for those huge CAD files to reside on a server where all stakeholders could securely access them. Even better, creators started to realize that the cloud would enable them to focus massive compute power on the objects in these files, crash testing, for example. All this made people start to ask why it made sense to use expensive installed programs when they could be using always up-to-date, pay-as-you-go software in the cloud. People suddenly saw through the emperor's new clothes. Second, like a dissipating fog, the uncool stigma around hardware began to lift. Seemingly out of nowhere, trendsetters in places such as Silicon Valley began to talk about makers. Third, as I discovered, there was growing unmet demand among CAD users for community, for some way to bridge the gaps between tens of thousands of individual engineers and designers who were exploring their still newfound capabilities. In 2010, I co-founded GrabCAD.com as an online community that allows 3D CAD users to share their designs and learn from one another. In just 3 years, our community has grown from a small village to a metropolis with more than 1 million members, more than 1/3 of the world's 3D CAD users. It's become an intense global community, buzzing with experimentation and imagination. Imagine is, in fact, the key word, because now the playing field tilts toward creators and designers. Although technological innovations opens the gate to this revolution, its motive power isn't in the tools. It's in the individual genius they unlock. It's in the new forms of network collaboration they enable. It's in devolving to individuals and small teams the ability to design, perfect, and fabricate any object they choose to create. The tools are now in hand, and imaginations are fired up. What is only now beginning to develop are new models of social organization, better suited to a product development and manufacturing process that will be vastly different from the models developed through the age of mass production. What will these new social models look like? Will giant companies be toppled by small, agile, crowd-funded startups? Will design and manufacturing become completely divorced? Or will new verticals emerge, with CAD designers directly instructing completely automated production? Will unskilled factory labor disappear? If labor cost becomes less decisive, will manufacturing activity leave China as fast as it arrived? And where will it go if it does? Everything we currently take for granted about product design, development, and manufacturing is now up in the air. Where it finally comes to rest will have huge implications for investors, business people, workers, and national economies. As the revolution unfolds, only a couple of things are certain. One is that the force will be with teams, big or small, with binary combination of powerful imagination and the collective skills needed to elaborate it accurately and quickly. The other certainty is that imagination is available from only one source: the inspired brains of individual human beings. That's why this revolution will be driven from the grassroots up, by engineers and designers with the full binary package. This book tells the story of this revolution, with a focus on the inspired brains I mentioned. And while many of those brains reside in engineers and designers, I think the lessons are important to anyone involved in making, selling, or even buying things, which is to say, all of us. To help make the connection between the engineering world and the more general business world, I've included at the end of each chapter a list of executive takeaways that spells out ways I think executives and other business people can take action. And who am I to tell you all this? As the host of a remarkable online community, I have a ringside seat on the revolution, and in the following chapters, I will share what I have seen so far. 1. Gearheads get no respect. Look around you. Unless you're in an antique shop, almost any manufactured object you see was created by a mechanical engineer using computer-aided design, CAD, software. Like a cowboy and his horse, object creators and their three-dimensional 3D CAD tools are almost inseparable today. So much so that after a long week working on CAD at the office, many will head straight to the basement after dinner on Friday to dive right back into CAD, working all weekend long on their hobby projects. They are driven by a specific kind of intelligence and particular passion. Much more than just a job, mechanical engineering is a calling that summons many of us in the sandbox. When asked what got them started, one gearhead after another will tell you something like, "I took apart every toy I got until they gave me Lego. Then I started putting things together and never stopped." It's good they have that passion driving them, because if it was all about glory, no one would pursue a career in mechanical engineering. You see these engineers' accomplishments everywhere, in innovations that drive economic growth and make the world a safer, greener, and more efficient place. But compared with the stars of other professions, such as architecture or design or medicine, mechanical engineers mostly toil away in quiet obscurity. It has always been rare to see an engineer profiled in the media, except perhaps in the magazine Popular Mechanics. In recent post-industrial age decades, gearheads have moved even further from the limelight than ever. After all, manufacturing is so 20th century. This isn't to say that mechanical engineers sit around moaning about how they get no respect. That's for lawyers. Who needs recognition when you are in one of the world's most stable professions anyway? No one with a mechanical engineering degree was ever short of a job. That began to change in the 1990s, as shifts in industrial activity led to the emergence of rust belts, first in the United States, Europe, and the former Soviet Union, and later in Japan. With less opportunity available close to home, mechanical engineers began to feel a need to look over the horizon for work. Fortunately, the development of CAD around the same time began to make it possible for engineering work to be done remotely. But where do you go to find engineering work on the other side of the globe? And how do you make contact with like-minded engineers around the corner and across the world? Love at first sight. In my own case, the call summoning me to mechanical engineering did not come until I was in high school. I was in 10th grade when, like a young cowboy, I saw my first horse. It was 1998 when I first set my eyes on a 3D CAD program, which was then still a recent innovation. It was love at first sight. In a single moment, CAD brought my fascination with information technology, fueled by an aptitude for math and physics, together with my delight in tinkering with physical objects, propelling me toward a career in mechanical engineering. For the next 10 years, I was happy to do nothing else. But fascination begins to wear thin once you find yourself endlessly tweaking the same set of variables. Instead of building the Ferraris and spaceships of my dreams, 5 years into my career as a professional engineer, I woke up one day to the dull reality of a routine job. Trapped in a tiny market and bored, I hit the wall. So I decided to write an app to get me over the wall. And this is what happened. Getting over the wall. I'm from Estonia, the tiny Baltic country that Stalin swallowed like a single shot of vodka, and tried to digest with a decades-long campaign of Russification. Escape from the Soviet Empire seemed like an unlikely dream, so as kids growing up in Tallinn, we just watched the West with envy via secret antennas turned into Finnish television stations 70 kilometers across the Baltic in Helsinki. I learned English by watching James Bond movies with English subtitles. We used to practice lines like, "shaken, not stirred." Miracle of miracles, though, as the Soviet Union disintegrated after the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, we managed to regain our independence in 1991. I was 9 years old when our little nation of 1.4 million people started over from zero as a capitalist society. It was almost like the beginning of a game of Monopoly, when the bank deals out the same amount of money to each player. Each man, woman, and child in Estonia was allowed to convert 1,500 rubles for 150 kron, our newly minted currency. This amount was equal to only a day's blue-collar wage in Finland, but it was like magic to hold our own money. Having wages much lower than Finland was actually convenient because Helsinki, 1 hour from Tallinn by ferry, was in the midst of an economic boom as it joined the European Union, and Nokia emerged as the global leader in GSM mobile telephony. Even better, because Estonian is perhaps as close to Finnish as Spanish is to Portuguese, we can easily understand what the Finns are on about. Don't worry, if you can't understand the Finns, you're not missing much. So, overnight, Estonia became Finland's Mexico, a low-cost outsourcing platform right next door. That created opportunity for people in Estonia with a wide range of industrial skills, but engineers were in short supply. And given how quickly technology was changing, recent engineering graduates had a huge advantage, especially those with information technology, IT, knowledge. To tell you this will make me sound like grandfather recounting how tough life was during the war, but to catch up with the West in IT, we really had to work at it. When I was a child, all we had was a very expensive dial-up connection to the internet. So my father used to strictly limit my time online to just half an hour each day. Not all bad. It forced me to learn as much as I could in the short time I had. In any case, I was working part-time as an apprentice before I finished engineering school. As soon as I received my diploma, I started to work full-time with Saku Metal, Estonia's largest door maker, and a key subcontractor for Kone, the Finnish elevator maker. By age 24, I was promoted to head of the IT department and made responsible for automating a wide range of engineering functions. It was a fun challenge and an exciting time. Across town, meanwhile, my friends were developing Skype, the internet-based telephony system that is Estonia's greatest contribution to human civilization, at least so far. Engineers in our small city with just 400,000 people were doing outsourced work for clients all around the world. If we got any respect, though, it was kind of backhanded. The Dilbert comic by Scott Adams continues to make fun of outsource engineers in Elbonia, apparently a corruption of our country's name. In response, let me paraphrase Leonard Skinner. I hope Scott Adams will remember an Elbonian man don't need him around anyhow. All the same, by 2008 I was bored with making doors and eager to play in a bigger league. So with a friend I set about creating a simple website aimed at offering 3D CAD service to clients around the world. The idea was that customers could upload rough design drawings to our site, which would then automatically generate a price quote. Not knowing anything at all about business, we promised whatever we could think of that might attract customers. Maybe satisfaction or your money back was not a bad idea, but 24-hour turnaround is a foolish promise to make if clients don't actually need it that fast. We lost a lot of sleep as a result. Our pricing was even dumber because we had absolutely no idea what things cost in the West, such as how much people are willing to pay for a cappuccino at Starbucks. So we offered to do CAD simple drawings for just $25 each. To emphasize our speedy service, we called it GrabCAD. The day the site went live in November 2009, we bought a $20 Google ad and sat watching our computer screens like a pair of ice fishermen looking down their hole in the lake. It took an entire week for the first order to come in. Rough drawings of an ATV wheelbarrow from a man in Texas. We spent 12 hours frantically working on the CAD file, and for our efforts we got $55. 3 months later, you can imagine my family's reaction when I quit my day job 1 week before the birth of my first daughter. Luckily, my wife Laura supported me then and every step of the way since. Meanwhile, my parents, my friends, and my colleagues all lined up to tell me one after the other that I was irresponsible and immature, if not clinically insane. Perhaps I am. But whatever else I might be, I'm stubborn. The GrabCAD vision began to evolve. We were fixated by the idea that we were building a service business, yet we realized that we were not going to get very far by staying up all night, every night, doing the work ourselves. Nor did we have the resources to hire a room full of full-time CAD designers. We scratched our heads trying to think up new ways to create a scalable marketplace by attracting freelancers and moonlighters whose services we could sell to clients. It was almost as an afterthought that in August 2010, we added what has turned out to be the magic feature that has grown our community into 1 million engineers and designers. An online place where CAD practitioners could share their designs. Within a month, we had almost 1,000 engineers using our site, and a vision began to form in my head, an online community that would give engineers easy access to sophisticated tools and allow them to collaborate seamlessly, and how all of this would revolutionize the making of physical objects. Beware of getting a big idea. Because 95% of our users were in the United States, I began to think, why am I here in Estonia if all the users are American? Or, as Toyota engineers say, Genji Genbutsu. Don't rely on second-hand data. Go straight to the source. In any event, I really wanted to go to America because it's the mecca of CAD. I persuaded my wife to let me take a chunk of our meager savings and managed to get a 3-month tourist visa for the United States. In October 2010, I flew to America with my family. What I discovered in America. When I arrived, I was 28 years old. I had just $3,000 in my pocket, which was supposed to last us 3 months. And I didn't know a soul. At least I could speak almost enough English to explain the ideas that were bouncing around in my head. Where should I go in such a big country? Of course, for anyone in IT, it is de rigueur to make a pilgrimage to the holy Silicon Valley. But where else? I decided on Boston because it is the epicenter of the CAD industry and home to the legendary Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. That's why I resolved to spend 6 weeks on each coast. If you believe the conventional wisdom, Silicon Valley is supposed to be a freewheeling culture with no hierarchy, a place where your ideas matter and your pedigree doesn't. Boston, by contrast, is seen, at least from California, as all uptight and Eastern, filled with preppies like the Winklevoss brothers of Facebook fame, and open only to people with Ivy League degrees. I had none of this baggage when I arrived in Boston, no preconceived ideas. So after installing the family in a cheap motel in Framingham, 20 miles out in the suburbs, I just began contacting people out of the blue. In Europe, if you try reaching out to people without an introduction or any sort of impressive credentials, usually they don't even bother to reply. So in Boston, I was delighted to find that even very busy and important people would respond to a cold call from a random Estonian by saying, "Please come and see me tomorrow." When we met, they listened with kind interest and usually offered to introduce me to others. In this way, doors opened to me everywhere I went. I met many of the top players in the CAD industry and was able to...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?